It's the Carnivore Rabbi here with you, with all of you, and with a very special guest to meet, pray, and love. Uh, some of you may already know our guest. He is a frequent YouTuber, been a guest on many top carnivore podcasts, and is just or YouTubes, and is just an incredibly thoughtful, insightful, committed advocate of the carnivore way of eating, and also offers a unique perspective. And it all starts with the fact that Rick has been a carnivore for, you're not going to believe this, 40 years, maybe more than that. I know there was a brief break there, but Rick, for those of you that don't know your story, and I think some of my audience might not, can you tell it to us? How did you become a carnivore, and how have you persisted in it?
Well, if you don't know my story, you would probably be one of the very few carnivores that don't, because I've been on YouTube since the summer of 2022, but I've been a carnivore since the summer of 1983. And I'm the most unique carnivore in all of YouTube because I am the only one that started as a form of protest. I wasn't trying to heal. I wasn't trying to make any changes. I didn't have any mental issues. I mean, I am mental anyway, but I didn't have any chronic health conditions, and I've never had chronic health conditions in all of my life. But I started it as a form of protest. My dad was very health conscious, and he was a strong believer in whole grains and fruits and vegetables. He did juicing. You know, he liked people like Jack LaLanne and Jake Cordich, the juice guy. And they had a lot of people back then. They were also, my parents were very much into the low fat and complex carbohydrate diet. And, you know, I was a kid, and I kind of got frustrated because as I got older, you know, elementary school, okay, but junior high, I was really short. I was kind of skinny, and I got picked on a lot. And I got to be a really kind of upset kid. I get mad all the time. I had a bad temper, and I was getting ready for high school. I had broke my arm falling through the roof. I was trying to help my dad build a carport, and I was kind of by myself. You know, my mother was taking courses for a teaching certificate. My dad was working. So I was kind of stuck at the house, and I didn't have a lot of options for cooking. You know, my mom generally did the cooking. She cooked dinner, but lunch a lot of times was just peanut butter sandwiches and some kind of, I don't know, whatever canned stuff they had, granola bars and all the other nasty duck food that I didn't like. So it kind of came down to, well, you're stuck at home. You got to eat something. You're going to have to learn how to cook. And I wasn't really that, let's just say, I wasn't that impressed with having to do that. But my dad had done barbecue, and I had done barbecue before. I thought, well, that could be the easiest thing. And we had some meat in the freezer. We had meat in the refrigerator. We had hamburgers every now and then. So I just started cooking up meat. And obviously, beef isn't the only meat that I like, although it is my favorite. I also like chicken. I like seafood. I like all kinds of food. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to start making my own lunch. And that's what I did. And then for breakfast, I was getting this oatmeal with my egg. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to bother with the oatmeal anymore. I don't care about that. And then I just thought, hey, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm eating this stuff. Why not? Why not just continue to eat the meat, the eggs, the dairy, which, you know, I was drinking milk at the time. I drank milk until I was about 20 years old. But I love cheese, yogurt. You know, I love all those dairy-based foods. The only thing is I don't like sweet foods, so anything that has sugar in it doesn't impress me. So I just kind of concentrated on the meats, and I concentrated on the fattiest meat. And, you know, I remember my mom and dad were saying, well, you can't eat like this for a long time because it's going to make you sick. You're going to get a heart attack. And I thought, man, that's kind of funny. If I had a heart attack and I was in high school, which I didn't want to go to high school, I thought, well, maybe I could have a heart attack and then I'd be able to get through my first year. I wouldn't have to go to school. Then I can get my GED, get out of school. My grades weren't that good anyway. So I thought, this is kind of fun. So I just started thinking of it as the heart attack diet. And then, yeah, you know, it's the heart attack diet. And then a year later, they had Time magazine. My parents, we were at Woolco, and I remember being in line. The line was kind of long, and a lot of times I'd look at the TV guide. A few weeks before that, they had a TV guide. One of my favorite shows was The Dukes of Hazzard, and I remember looking through there, and I finally got my mom to buy me the TV guide. I still have it somewhere in my collection. But that other week we went to Woolco, and I think my mom was getting clothes or something, and they had a Time magazine right there, and it had what looked like a plate. It was like a
Mhm.
dish. It had two eyes that were eggs, and it had bacon like a frown or something like that. And then it was saying the bad news that these foods were bad for you. So I had been eating like that for over a year, and I saw that and I thought, man, this is just great, and of course by that time it had already become sort of my way of life. I figured out how to have my mom make the breakfast for me, just the eggs, no more oatmeal. We had a battle over that. No more oatmeal, just eggs and bacon and some kind of meat. Then we started making the hamburger with eggs, which my mom would call what she called Salisbury steak. We used to call it Salisbury steak,
Yeah.
but it was really just hamburger.
Right.
And I'd have that with the eggs, and I felt so good. When I was a younger kid, getting up in the morning was always a chore. That alarm would ring at 6:30, and it was like, oh, I don't want to go to school. I hated school. Oh, it was terrible because you have to get out of there before 8 so you can get in school. Just absolutely horrible. But then when I changed my diet, I started to wake up in the morning. I thought, oh, I could smell the eggs and the meat cooking, and it would just wake me up. And I had one of those alarm clocks that had a Kmart. I was thinking about that recently because I always look forward to going to Kmart. It was called the monkey alarm clock or the monkey clock, whatever. It came from Kmart, and it was basically like a monkey, and it had like a handle on top of it that looked like hands, and then it had a bell that would ring. Well, it finally had broken, and my mom eventually got me a digital alarm clock from Kmart, which I also still have. In fact, it's I'm looking at it right now. It's over the TV that I use as a monitor. But I remembered I never really I didn't need it anymore. It was like, okay, the clock's broken. It doesn't work anymore, but I'm still getting up at 6:30. So I
Mhm.
thought, that's kind of interesting. And then of course in school at lunch, it came down to, what can you eat? I had eaten sandwiches before that, but my mom used to give me a canned ravioli or something like that. So what I started doing, I started getting Tupperware containers. I would make up a ground beef stew and I'd put them in there. And I know
Mm.
they're plastic, but they were convenient. They had that kind of corrugated lid. They came in different colors. And again, I found one of those that had disintegrated when I was cleaning out the old cabinet in the kitchen. It brought back memories. Every day I'd have to take that thing with me. Then I'd have to wash it out in the bathroom, with some soap and then dry it off and then take it home. But that was my lunch. It was basically just ground beef. It was cooked and then put in a container, and I'd eat it cold. And everybody laughed at me. And then I also love liver. So what I would do a lot of times, I would eat the liver with my lunch, and it was generally raw liver because I preferred the raw liver to the cooked liver.
Liver's
So
better
all the
raw.
liver was all frozen, and then when it would thaw out, I would just put it in there, and it was still cold, but I could just chew on it. Originally, I had a knife and fork because back then they used to allow you to have metal knives and forks when I was in school. But then after that, it became a problem because I kept losing it. And then I ran into a problem one time. I had some kid that was bothering me, and I got in the office and said, oh, the kid's got a knife. I'm like, no, I used it to cut my food. So I got rid of the knife and fork, and then I just chewed the liver. I just ate it in pieces. I would also do that with steak. A lot of times I'd cook the steak, I'd put it in a container, and then I'd take it with me and I would just chew on it. And I've gotten to that habit to this day. I was eating my lunch and basically I just chew the meat up. I just use a fork sometimes and a dish. I'm not like some of the carnivores that they have their cutting board and they cut it and they put salt on it. I don't do any of that. I just grab a piece of meat. I pick it up with my hands. That's why my hands are usually greasy when I've had lunch. I'll wash my hands after lunch, of course. But in school, I did the same thing. And again, I got picked on a lot. So as you can see, my hair is loaded with lard or tallow. I started doing that. In junior high, I used to use Vaseline because the kids would spit on my hair and they try to put their hand and mess it up. So with the Vaseline in there, I kept them away. But then I thought, why would I use Vaseline? I got all this animal fat. That's even nastier. I could put that on there. The problem with the Vaseline is that it'll make you hot. We didn't have air conditioning when I was in school, although they did get it in high school. But
In
a lot of
Miami,
times
this is too,
in
right?
Miami, yes. And I would sweat, and it was just not a pleasant experience. But I found that when I use the lard or tallow, it doesn't do that. In fact, it's just the opposite. I can go in the sun, and I spend a lot of time outside. I never wear a hat because I don't like hats. They're too hot. Even I wish my parents were alive, because every time my parents try to put a hat on, I would throw it off because I tend to get hot very easily. So, but with this lard and the tallow that I use, I have no problem. And then they would tell me, well, that stuff is going to make your hair fall out. And then they said, well, all that fat you're eating is going to give you acne. Well, I never got acne all the time that I was a teenager. I haven't had it since. And, it's
And
everything
Rick,
has,
Rick,
yeah.
tell us, because this is going to shock some people. One, how old you are. Two, how tall you are. And three, how tall you were when you were in high school before you started carnivore.
Well, first of all, I'm 56 years old. So I don't know if that's going to shock anyone, because when I started talking about my carnivore diet, I was 54 and now I'm 56. So, I mean, if it shocks them, okay. And then, and you were saying that,
How
well,
tall are you?
obviously, yeah,
Yeah.
well, the height, I mean, I'm 6'6". I'm an inch taller than Dr. Sean Baker. So I am very tall.
And how tall were your parents?
My dad was about maybe 5'9", and my mom was like maybe 5'6" or 5'7".
And you're
I
six
have,
six.
yeah, you could see a picture of me when I was in junior high in ninth grade on my community page on YouTube, and the girls were taller than me. It was quite shocking. And you got to realize that's one of the reasons I was so down about myself. I felt just terrible,
Right.
because not only was I skinny and looked like somebody from elementary school, but I was also very short. So I got picked on a lot, and I just, can you imagine being with high school kids? You got the high school kids; they're already growing facial hair. They got physique. They look like men. They look like, I look like some stupid kid from sixth grade. So it was really, and then on top of that, I had a really very bad temper. I just would get mad and upset, and I'm not like I am now. My life, I am so different now. I have my car break down, my roof leak, I have stuff fall down, I have people treat me, badly, and it doesn't bother me. But when I was a kid, I used to take it all to heart, and somebody would say something bad to me, I'd feel bad the rest of the day. It was just a whole different thing. And of course, you can see what's happened. Even my grade point average, it went from a C to an A in about a
Wow.
year. It's really quite amazing. I don't I don't know what it was.
Were you aware? I mean, now you look back and we know how the carnivore diet affects people. Were you aware at the time? Did you attribute it to the diet or just to, normal growth?
I I was not aware of anything. And honestly, I was not aware of the carnivore diet until a few years ago. The first time I saw anything about carnivore diet had to be like 2019. It was
Wow.
2018 or 2019, because that's when my mom started having a lot of health issues. And I couldn't really work as much as I was, so I got stuck on the internet. And a lot of times, I got on YouTube as early as 2006, and I started posting videos in 2007. But then when my dad got sick in 2010, I stopped. Plus, I had some controversy. My channel was deleted. I had a lot. I got into a battle, because it's a long story. But it wasn't until maybe 2018 when I was taking care of my mom, because what happened to her, she was always anemic and she had all these problems. And at the beginning of 2018, it was like around January, she had like a really bad infection. So I had to spend a lot of time at the hospital trying to help her out, because my mom, she wanted to die. Every time she said, I want to die, I said, Mom, why don't you join me on the heart attack diet? Oh, I can't eat all that meat. Oh, ew, meat, ew, it's disgusting. My mom did not like steak. That was the one thing. She never ate a steak in her life. And she
Wow.
wouldn't eat pork. She would eat chicken. She would eat a little bit of eggs. Obviously, she would never eat duck or iguana. That was like a no-no. Even though I snuck duck eggs into her breakfast more than once, she didn't know it. But my mom, once I had to take care of her, then I basically spent more time on the internet, and they did have Wi-Fi at the hospital and the nursing home. So I was trying to look up what can I do to help my mother to get stronger, and they kept talking about, eat more meat for iron. I'm like, I know. Then somebody said carnivore diet, and it was actually Paul Saladino, the fruity guy, and he was stressing. He says, "Oh, I'm on the carnivore diet." He had his shirt off, and he's showing how. I'm thinking, carnivore diet. What is that?
And it
And then I
clicked. And
realized
that's what I've been doing.
that's what I've been doing my whole life. What's the carnivore diet? It's a diet of meat and water, and that's it. It's just meat and water. Now, my carnivore diet is not, well, it varies between the extreme lion diet and a mixed diet, as I've mentioned before. Now, I think this whole year I might have eaten 3 pieces of fruit, but there are some times when I will eat yard grown fruit. It's just haven't been in the mood for it. Usually like later in the summer. So probably by July, August, maybe September, I'll eat some bananas. I'll eat a homegrown watermelon. I'll make something with tomatoes. I do make an excellent meat sauce for my
Mm.
friends, and I use garden grown tomatoes. But you see, I can't eat normal tomato sauce. It does not agree with me. It gives me diarrhea and gas and all kinds of stuff. But if I make it myself,
Wow.
I take the tomatoes, I boil them, I peel them, and I strain the seeds out. But they have to be ripe tomatoes. If they're from the store, they are inedible. I can't eat them. Tomatoes give me a bad reaction.
That's fascinating. And so do you just trust your sort of natural intuition about when okay, I can have fruit now? Do you ever notice any negative consequences to it? I mean, no, you just basically feel the same.
I feel exactly the same. In fact, sometimes I feel better. When I get the interest in eating some fruit from the yard, it's funny because there's fruit all over the place. My yard is like a tropical jungle. And I walk out there, I got coconuts, I got bananas, I got mangoes, I got avocados. Now, avocados are one thing I cannot eat. They are very disgusting to me. They taste awful. I hate them. But a
Mm.
lot of the keto people, they like avocados. I don't understand. My
They're high fat.
vegetarian yeah, my vegan friends go nuts for my avocados. I have some big, I mean, some of those avocados are like that long. They're almost a foot long. They're pear shaped. They're huge, and they go for it. And me, I like it. And then some people use avocado oil. I have a rule in my kitchen: oil, no
No.
oil ever. Oil goes in the tank of my truck, or it's a lubricant. I will not eat oil. Oil is not food.
So
So
let's get also. I mean, this is just incredible. You hear about carnivore online. You realize this is what I've been doing, and now I know that the first time you interviewed was with our friend Joey Schwartz, who is not active as a carnivore on YouTube anymore, even though some of his content was just fantastic. I love Joey, even though he is sort of a controversial guy. But you reach out to Joey, and why? What leads you to do that? How? What changed in your mindset when you realized, wow, I'm a carnivore?
Well, actually, it was Joey that reached out to me. What
Okay.
happened was I had commented on some of his videos.
Hmm.
Now, this was after my mom had died, and I was, we had the virus that was going around. So I had some time off. I had one of my customers I normally work for, they were out of town. So I was kind of sitting around at the computer and I was looking at all these different carnivore videos. And he had an interview, and I don't remember exactly who it was. And I had made a note that, I have been eating this diet for 40 years or since 83 or whatever it was,
Yeah.
39 years, I think it was at the time.
Wow.
And then he sent me a message, and in the chat he says, "Would you like to be on an interview?" I thought, why? Why would I want to be on an interview? And then, I had sent a couple messages back and forth. Well, eventually, I guess he got my email from my YouTube page, and then he had, okay, you want to interview? So I decided, why not?
It's
I'll
fantastic.
do an interview. No big deal. I didn't really think it was anything special because you have to realize that I've been doing this for so long. I don't even think about it. It's not even a thing. It's not like I'm out there promoting something. But when he asked me to do it, I said, okay. So we did an interview, and it wasn't live, it was recorded. But when he did play the interview, I went into the chat and I was making comments, and all of a sudden I see all these people saying, "Wow, look at this guy. He's that old. Wow, I can't believe it." The whole thing, it just like, you got to be kidding me. So next thing you know, you have 100 people or whatever it was watching the interview. I thought,
Yep.
it's really weird. And then over time, I showed it to my friends, and they said, "Wow, what an interview. I never knew that about you. Like, you've known me for decades." So, yeah, I know what you eat, but I never knew the story. And then I started seeing the viewer count going up and up and up and up. And it's like 20,000, 30,000, 50,000. Like, what in the world? That many people are watching the video. It was the last time I saw it, it was almost 300,000 views. It was crazy.
I loved that video when I saw it. I think one of the most interesting things about that video, which I want you to reflect on now, is your philosophy of life. I think one of the reasons a lot of people come to carnivore for health reasons, to lose weight, deal with skin issues, autoimmune illnesses. And that's a big reason a lot of people come, and that's beautiful. And the carnivore diet is incredibly effective with that. But I came to it in some ways on a health reason, but the spiritual and the mental health part of it, and the way it's changed the way I look at life, has been so much more impactful. So, talk about your life philosophy and maybe the ways in which your way of eating kind of undergirds it.
Well, the only thing I can say for sure is that after I switched to a meat based diet, my view of the world did change. Before that, I used to be someone that tried to follow a trend, but I was never good enough. No matter what I did, it was never good enough. Whatever the style was, I couldn't keep up with it. And there's a lot of things that I just didn't like that
Mhm.
I would try to do. Well, after I started the carnivore diet, and I began to realize that a lot of the things that people told me were not actually true. I wasn't dying. I was getting better. You know, it wasn't like I didn't have the heart attack, and I actually got stronger,
Yes.
and I was able to concentrate more. I mean, I was still skinny. I'm skinny to this day, but it just it changed my view on the world because now I could start to look at the way things really worked. And I began to understand that we were basically being lied to. We had all these advertisements telling us the things that we need, and all these ideas and this self-help gurus, and you have to do this and that.
Yes.
And it's like, wait a minute. God put us on the earth for a reason. He put us to learn and to help others to learn, and here we are listening to this propaganda that comes through the TV and comes through the media, and then people are brainwashed to believe that you have to have certain things to be happy, and they don't realize that the happiness is already inside of us. We just have to know how not to get in its way, not to how to overcomplicate our life and ruin the good things in the world. And for what? Just to make a few parasites rich at our expense. And then it disrupts family relationships and everything, and friendships. So it started to come to me. It's like, wait a minute. Why would I worry about things I can't control? Why don't I just concentrate on the things that I have been given and the things that I can deal with? It makes no sense to worry about things you have no control over. I'm going to do my part and God's going to do his part.
You just described my philosophy so eloquently, Rick. Um, what brings you happiness? What provides your life the sense of meaning, and kind of you speak clearly and with such calmness and simplicity. What brings you meaning?
My meaning comes from solving problems, from making other people's lives better and making animals' lives better.
Mm.
That's it.
Animals' lives. What do you mean by that? I know you love ducks. Talk about that a little bit.
Oh, I love ducks.
Yeah.
You see, there's a lot of animals out there that suffer needlessly. In the natural world, it's dog eat dog, it's kill or be killed, and that's the way that it works.
Mm.
But in my world, it's a little different. You see, the ducks that are around here are considered to be nuisance, and they're considered to be garbage because they poop all over and they make a mess. But to me, they're sort of like it's sort of like a triumph over an adverse situation. Miami is a place that the environment has been completely destroyed. It's been wiped out, all in the name of profit. The whole idea is stack and pack. Cram as many people as you can in a small space, and then that way you can make more money. So you create this area that's supposed to be special. And then you start off with a decent living standard, whatever. And then you just start stuffing more and more people in. You just figure out ways to stack them up, whatever it takes. Well, the ducks, they've managed to thrive despite the environment being destroyed. So all the natural wildlife is gone, but we still have these cute little ducks. So I'm thinking, well, and the poor little ducklings, you may have 20 ducklings and only 4 or 5 survive to adulthood. So as a kid, I thought, why are these ducks have such a hard life? But now that I've gotten older, it's like, well, I see them down in the drain. They need rescuing. I find them left behind in the nest and I rescue them. They're drowning in the canal. I rescue them. I bring them here, take care of them, and then give them a chance to grow up to be a big duck. And then they can go out and they can mate and they can lay eggs and do their thing. They provide me with delicious eggs that I can eat. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to manage the suffering of animals by giving them a quality of life and then controlling their population by eating their eggs and then singling out the more aggressive and more, let's just say, not so nice ducks and turning them into my dinner. So the quality of life for the existing ducks is far better than it would be in the wild, where the only thing they have to look forward to is being eaten by a predator. Around here, I try to control the predators. The
Kind
only
of creating
predator
your own
around,
ecosystem.
right? The only predator around here is me.
Right.
And the thing is, unlike the wild predators that'll tear them apart alive, my ducks get a very special ending. I take the aggressive duck, I put him in a special pen. I feed him all kinds of duck food. I let him mate with females. He's living a good life until one day he sticks his head through that opening where he eats and that blade comes down and that's it. Mr.
Wow.
Ducky is lights out.
That's fascinating. Talk about what you do. It's amazing in terms of fixing things, your love of cars, and just how that is shaped. Yeah, I know you're not a minimalist. You collect many things, but what kinds of things do you collect, and what do you do with them?
I collect things that make life better. So anything that can provide me with more, more effectiveness, I can get more work done. I get better transportation, get a better living conditions, more comfortable. Um, Anything that can make my life better, I will collect, which means that I try to avoid things that are disposable. When it comes to clothing, as you can see, I'm not fashionable. I just use the bare minimum. A lot of times I'll get stuff that's marked down, even stuff from the thrift store. When it comes to style, I have my own style. I'm very much into mid-century 1950s, 1960s. I like that design. Um, Let me think what else.
What about cars? And your
Well,
YouTube is Charger Moper.
Charger Mopar. My
Mopar.
favorite car has always been and remains the 1968 to 1970 Dodge Charger. I will not drive any other car. Now, I do drive trucks and vans that are Ford. I consider them to be work vehicles. They are old. I don't have anything newer than 1998, but I like to have vehicles that I understand how they work and I can work on them. I will never drive a car for some type of attention. I don't want to try to have some overpriced luxury car to try to look important, because one of the things that I believe in, I'm a lot like an Amish person. I've actually been called the modern Amish because even though I have electricity and I do love technology, I'm a big fan of technology. Don't get me wrong, I may have a rotary phone, but that rotary phone is voice over IP. So it's like everything. I have everything networked. I've had a computer network since 1995. I do believe 100% in technology, but I only have technology that I understand. If it's something that I can work with, I can service, maintain, and explain how it works, then that's it. My degree is in electrical engineering. I actually taught at Miami-Dade College for 13 years. I taught electronics. So, but I like the idea of having a simple life and have food that you can reach out and touch. Now, I do buy meat from the store, but eventually when I move, Hopefully I'll be in a place where I can buy a whole animal, process it myself. But I believe that in order for a person to be healthy and to be well-rounded, they need to have a connection to the earth. You have to live at ground level. You have to have some plant material outside, some animals. I am against living in a sterile environment. In fact, one of the worst places that you could go to, in my opinion, would be like downtown Miami, that stupid Brickell Avenue, where you have those ridiculous high rises, which I call hurricane bait. I would never want to live like that. I would like to live in Miami back in the 1900s when it was
Right.
just pine trees and alligators and whatever else.
Paradise. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been good for me because I like swamps. I'm the kind of person I love to live in the Everglades. I wouldn't want to live in a desert, but I have no trouble living surrounded by snakes and alligators. They don't bother me as much as the two-legged ones do.
That's great. Tell me about you got involved with YouTube in 2006 and they shut down your channel. There's got to be a good story there. What was that all about?
Well, I had two channels. I had one channel that was dedicated to exposing free energy scams. Now, I'm into engineering and technology, and I've always been pushing the first two laws of thermodynamics. Everyone's familiar with the first one, but nobody knows the second one. And the second one is basically summarized in the word entropy. And what it is that every time that you change from one state of matter to another, you end up with greater disorder. And this concept is present throughout nature. It is also present in all animals and plants. So over time, this is a reason why you may grow to a certain point, reach your peak, and then begin to degenerate as you age. That's the way it is. Now, entropy can be counteracted with energy constantly be putting back in. It's like the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and the tree of life. As long as they ate from the tree of life, they could continue living. When they stopped eating from the tree of life, then they would die. It's the same thing like if you had your house and you never maintained it. Well, eventually the roof would rot, everything would fall apart, and in 300 years, there would be a few blocks and a bunch of trees growing in there.
Right.
Your car rusts out. Everything that is in the natural world and everything that humans make breaks down. So the idea was people were going out there with scams. You can make water into fuel. You can have a motor that runs itself, perpetual motion. And I explained to them, it's impossible. There is nothing, the natural laws don't allow it. There's no such thing as perpetual motion. It doesn't exist. There's even an old saying, there's no such thing as a free lunch.
Yes.
And that comes from, back in the 1800s, they used to give a free lunch at a saloon to lure people in. But the reason they were there is so they buy the drinks.
Of course.
It's not a free lunch. So when you have people out there, and remember, they had the oil crisis, well, the 70s when I was a kid. And then in the 2000s, when we had the inflation, we had gas prices go way up. So they were selling people hydrogen, what they call that, electrolysis, hydrolyzer, all kinds of garbage. And I told them, I explained on my channel, and I built one, and I proved using basically thermodynamics. I built a homemade calorimeter, and I showed how much energy it took to make the hydrogen. And then when you burn the hydrogen, how much you get back. And it was only about 40%. And by the time that I went through it, I got into a battle with one of these channels. They had like water for gas or something like that. And it went back and forth. And I guess they were advertising on YouTube. So I think what happened was YouTube shut me down because I was exposing their scam. But then the funny thing is YouTube restored my channel a few weeks later, but they got rid of the videos that I had. And then some of the other videos that were unrelated, they disappeared too. So I think there's only 2 or 3 videos that made it through that whole thing. But after that happened, I just said, I don't care anymore about YouTube. I was on MySpace and I was also on Vimeo, which I had posted videos there as well. Of course, they're gone. I guess they changed it. But and then my dad started getting sick in 2010. And after that, I didn't feel like doing videos anymore. So I gave up on it. That's what happened.
Yeah. Tell me about how your life has changed a little bit since you started talking more about carnivore. Do people reach out to you for advice, for insight? I know you've got a YouTube channel going. How have you tried to sort of spread this or teach this message?
I don't get that many people reaching out. Most of the people that reached out, they've been for interviews. They wanted to talk to me like you're doing. but I don't get too many people that reach out to me because I think in many ways when it comes to the carnivore lifestyle, I'm not the ideal. When they think of somebody they want to look like, they might think about Anthony Chafee
Yeah.
or Sean Baker or something like that. Nobody wants to be a 6'6" toothpick,
Yeah.
and an eccentric one at that. One that goes around playing with ducks, working on old cars. It's I'm not the kind of person that you would aspire to be. So I think that's probably what it is. But on the other hand, I have yet to meet anyone in person from YouTube in all the years that I've been on YouTube. In fact, I've conversed back and forth. I've sent emails, but I've never been able to actually meet
Yeah.
anyone. It's kind of interesting, but
Strange.
no, yeah, it's I don't know. It's not that much. Now I do get a lot of comments, and because I'm a small YouTube channel, I respond to pretty much every comment that I can. A lot of the larger channels they don't respond to comments
Yes, I know.
because either they can't or they just don't want to. I mean, I don't know,
Right.
but
And some of the
that's
ones that do, they're paying people to do it. They've got
right.
an assistant or something, which is, I guess, better than not responding at all.
That's
Um,
true.
yeah.
That's true. But I've seen the thing is on my YouTube journey, my goal was to try to meet people from all over. That's why I started the YouTube channel. There was no such thing as YouTube monetization until a couple
Right.
of years. And then back then, you couldn't have a video that was longer than 10 minutes.
I
You had to
remember
have a
that.
special, it had to be like special category to be over half an hour or whatever it was. And then, of course, over time, it changed and it just became you could put whatever you want. But that's what it is. And in the early days, it was really just the gamer channels that were popular. These
Right.
teenage kids that they'd talk and they'd sit there playing their video game. That's where a lot of these, more popular YouTube channels came from. And I hate video games. I don't like, I mean, even though I like technology, I think they're stupid. Sitting in front of a computer playing a game. I mean, I could understand, let's say, if you want to do a flight simulator or something that would relate to maybe you were trying to be a pilot. Okay, I can see that. But a lot of these role playing games, I just don't see the purpose of it. I could just go outside and do something. I could go for a bike ride or play with my ducks, and I'll get a lot more stimulation than I would sitting in front of a computer screen. I just
Yeah.
don't get it. So
I think you nailed it. I'm not a video game guy either. I think some people it's just good entertainment. Um, what in terms of work, is working on cars your main work? Is that the primary way to pay the bills?
I do whatever I can find. I do some auto repairs, although I try to avoid it because working on cars, especially the newer ones, can be a real nightmare. I tend to specialize in the older ones. There are still several people out there, most of them have money, that have antique cars. Antique cars are no longer for poor people like me. So I've done a lot of repairs on, 60s and 50s cars and so on, even older, where they've had reliability problems and general maintenance. And I do
Mhm.
work on cars even from the 2000s, brake job, air conditioning. I do a lot of air conditioning repair, I have to admit. There seems to be a lot of money in automotive air conditioning. And
Interesting. So you kind of, in your approach to life, you kind of take it as it comes, right? As meals, as work. It's really a kind of beautiful way of living. In some ways, different. Some ways you goes back to the hunter gatherer era. I mean, one of the things that I love about carnivore is it brings us closer to nature. And the hunter gatherers, they lived each day. It wasn't as if, oh, we're going to, invest for a 10-year horizon or we're going to get this training. So, I mean, yes, people learned and people, but it was much more living in the present, living in the moment. And it sounds to me that's kind of what you do as well. Is that accurate?
it's pretty much. I mean, I do try to predict trends. I'm very good at predicting trends, but then I
Yeah.
realize there's not a whole lot I can do about it. So I'm just going to go day to day. Because see, you got to remember when you're on the heart attack diet, you're expecting the heart attack at any time. So
Yeah.
long-term planning just doesn't make sense because at any moment you could stand up, get that sharp pain, fall over, and that's it. It's over. So why would you plan all these ideas for the future? And I don't have any kids. I don't have a family. So when I'm gone, I'm gone. So I
Yeah.
just do what I can to survive now, and I try to be as practical as possible. And that's basically what my life is.
Beautiful. tell me, you're good at predicting trends, which I would agree with. I mean, if you were on YouTube back in 2006, what are some big trends you see now? What does the future look like?
Well, the biggest trend that I see is a financial disaster, but I think everybody can see that now because of what the Federal Reserve has done to ruin the economy, inflate the stock market, and overprice the real estate market. That's going to be a big problem. I think eventually people are going to revolt. The younger generations are going to get sick and tired of being given the short end of the stick, and they're going to fight back. They have no choice. I think there's also a trend of going back to the land. People are getting a little tired of trying to be within a system that always leaves them behind. So you're going to see more homesteading and more, um, trying to be natural, trying to get away. What they call a de-influencer. You're not going to start following influencers to tell you what to do. You're going to be your own influencer.
Yes.
So de-influencers are going to be the next thing. Think for yourself. That's what that old guy Gerald Salente always said. Think for yourself. You start to see these different people out there, and you realize that some of the wisdom that you've been told is actually true, and some of the ideas that you've been told are false. And of course, the climate change thing, that's another bunch of nonsense. They keep trying to scare everybody with the climate change. What they don't tell you is that the climate has always changed over the millions of years or billions of years the Earth has been in existence. There's nothing that we can do about it. The only thing that we can do is try to deal with what's happening. If it's getting hotter in one place, another place may actually be becoming more prosperous. They say, well, the ocean's going to rise. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case. I live in South Florida. I see what's going on in the ocean. It's not getting any higher.
Right.
There's just a lot of things they're telling us that are not true. So I think trend-wise, people are going to have to become more aware. I think the internet is helping to some extent, although there is a lot of censorship that takes place. I think that it's going to be less important for people to memorize facts and more important for people to be able to use those facts to make things happen. I think people are going to be more interested in understanding how the world works. And I think in the long run, it's going to be good, but I do think that eventually there's going to be a breakdown. There's going to be some kind of moment where things get really, really bad, and then eventually they'll get better.
Yeah.
So I think that those are the long-term trends.
So what does your future look like, Rick? I mean, obviously you live day to day, so maybe this is not the best question, but you mentioned moving. Do you want to stay in Miami?
No, I don't want to stay in Miami because I consider Miami to be a lost area. It's the environment is completely destroyed, and there is nothing left. It's all built up. Let's just say there's no room to grow. So I need to get out of here. The problem is I don't want to go into a desert climate. I don't want to go somewhere where the water is hard to get. I have to be somewhere where water is easy to get and it's not too cold, because if it's too cold, then a lot of the things that I'm kind of used to aren't going to work anymore.
Right.
But
Right.
the most important thing is to find a place where a lot of the people are more aware, and they're not the kind of people that are just going to eat junk food and smoke cigarettes and sit in front of the TV collecting welfare, because that right there, that's another recipe for disaster. You need to be around people that are somewhat self-sufficient and aware, so when the things do get bad, then at least you're going to have a little bit of resilience. You're not going to be on the edge instantly. You have that little buffer in between. It's like when we have a hurricane here and I have my generator and food supply. That helps. But what really helps is the friends and people who can call you up and tell you what's going on. You can say, okay, well, there's somebody threw this out, or this work needs to be done, or I have somebody that needs a job. You network together, and it's like a tree. A tree has a network of roots. If the roots are cut, it weakens the tree. So when you have people that are fighting with each other, for example, living in a city, that's a really bad situation because they're on the edge. When things get bad, then they're going to be basically trying to kill each other to get what they need. Whereas if you have a network of people that are used to dealing with hard times, then they're able to work together. That's like I said with the Amish. The Amish people, they may be strange and they have some weird customs, but they always find a way to work together. They can put up a building by themselves in a matter of days. They can grow food. They're resourceful people, and they don't try to show off You don't see them out there trying to impress anybody. They wear plain clothes, they work together, they do really well. So ideally, I'd like to find an area that had people like that are not necessarily as extreme as they are, because I don't want to be in a horse and buggy if I don't have to be.
Right.
But maybe people, they raise their own food, they raise fruits and vegetables and cattle and poultry and whatever. And then when the system falls apart, which it eventually will, I mean, you can't increase this debt forever and expect not to have inflation or some kind of hyperinflation. At least you'll have food, because no matter how dysfunctional the system gets, the sun keeps shining, the rain keeps coming down, and the animals keep growing, and God makes the plants grow. It just continues on. As
Yeah.
long as people don't interfere with it, it's always going to be there. So the closer you can get to that, and the further you can get away from a fake place like Miami, the better.
It's beautiful. Rick, what a great conversation as always. I think people could listen to you philosophize and give your perspective. And so grateful that you are a voice in this carnivore community in so many dimensions. So thank you. People can find your YouTube channel. Tell everyone where.
My YouTube channel is called Charger Mopar, and it's at YouTube. Charger Mopar parentheses Rick. I put my name in there so you know who I am. All you have to do, if you want to find me, look on YouTube for 40-year carnivore or ducks or iguanas or something like that, because I also show some iguana recipes, and I do cook and eat iguanas because they are invasive down here. They were eating my garden. They were basically wrecking everything I was growing. And then when I realized they were edible, that problem was solved.
Good. Thank you, Rick. Thanks for your time and your perspective.